Hey everyone, I hope you've been enjoying your day of Beers Without Beards empowered by Bumble here. We're getting ready to switch it up a little bit, which I'm definitely ready to. I know many of you have been probably drinking a lot of beer throughout the day, so we're going to take a break and make a few rad beer cocktails during our beer cocktail class in partnership with Jägermeister. So for those of you that don't know, Jägermeister actually launched its Deer and Beer campaign recently, about a couple of years ago, which pairs an ice cold shot of Jägermeister with craft beer all across the country. So the 56 botanicals and ingredients that go into Jägermeister actually pair really well with and enhance many different craft beer styles, from East Coast IPAs to lagers to more. So today, leading our cocktail class is Kat Cannon. Kat is the co-owner of Mindful Hospitality Group, which is a bar consulting, education, and event company based in Pittsburgh, PA. Before getting this entrepreneurial itch, Kat worked in various hospitality positions and managed bars and restaurants across New Jersey and Pennsylvania for the last 15 years, so she's super knowledgeable. She's an expert on how to make cocktails, and she's going to walk you through a few different recipes that are taking classic styles, really putting a twist on it, incorporating Jägermeister and incorporating some of the amazing beer that we have in the Beers Without Beards VIP beer box if you got it, but basically beer that's been brewed by women or comes from breweries that are women-led. So, Kat, I'm going to kick it over to you so we have the max amount of time to create these wonderful cocktail recipes. So I'll hop on out. If anyone has a question for Kat, we're going to spend most of the time just making these cocktails. Probably won't get to a Q&A at the end, so feel free. You can check her out, send her a DM at her handle at Cannon S. Baja. All right, Kat, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Thanks so much, Grace. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. I know you guys have had a full day full of really awesome seminars. And boy, doing some cocktails with these beers and Jägermeister has been truly exceptional. Playing around, there's nothing better for me than kind of finding new inventive ways to put ingredients into cocktails. And this VIP box was full of so many cool options. It was really, really, really hard to choose. But I have 4 full cocktails plus a little Boilermaker to start the day off for ways that you can kind of imbibe and enjoy your VIP box a little differently than just straight drinking your beer. So again, thank you, Grace and Jägermeister, Hop Culture, for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here. So I figured, what better way to kick off than a Boilermaker, which is going to be a ice cold shot of Jägermeister. And if you have Jägermeister at home, you should be keeping this bad boy in the freezer. This wants to be as ice cold as possible. It's really going to enhance all the aromatics that come from that flavor, and it's going to give you the most enjoyable experience possible. So we're going to do an ice cold shot of Jägermeister. And I was so pumped to see this really delightful light lager from Rhythm Blue in there, and I thought, what a great pairing to kick it off, like a traditional German style lager with a historically German brand, Jägermeister. What's a better combo? You know what I mean? So cheers, guys. Let's kick it off. I think that all the aromatics that you get from the Jaeger just pair so nicely with these crisp notes, in the hoppy maltiness of the Rhythm Blue. I also was really excited to do a Boilermaker, this deer in a beer, if you will. There is, as Grace mentioned, I'm from Pittsburgh, and so I've incorporated a little bit of Pittsburgh touches throughout all the cocktails today, because, you got to rep your hometown. In fact, even the Jägermeister bottle has a Pittsburgh Penguins logo on it. Pretty pumped about that. But yeah, so the Boilermaker actually originated in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of stories. As you go with cocktails in general, the history of cocktails gets really muddied because people, when these cocktails developed, people were drinking a lot in bars. And so the details get a little fuzzy here and there, but there is one of the stories that originated from Pittsburgh with the steelworkers here, and that after a long shift, they rewarded themselves with a beer and a shot. So I'm super pumped to be able to feature a little deer and a beer here with you guys today. all of the cocktails that we're gonna do today are kind of riff on classics. Some like old school classics that you're probably definitely familiar with, and a couple of newer, more modern classics. But they all just have some sort of Jägermeister influence in them, and also I've found ways to incorporate these awesome beers with them. So the first we're gonna start off with is everybody's favorite, the old standard classic, the old fashioned. So old fashioned is the most simplest form of a cocktail. It is spirit, it is sugar, it is citrus, and it is bitter with a little bit of water. And those are like the basics of what you need to make any great drink. So what we're going to be using today is we are going to be making our whiskey with Old Overholt rye. I really wanted these spicy notes to come through with the cocktail. And the beer, we're gonna have a little bit of Jägermeister cold brew in there. So it's gonna give it that really cool seasonal, like roasty, warming notes to it, which I'm super excited to play around with. I decided as far as a beer, I was going to go with this really awesome Resident Culture West Coast Connection Double IPA. And I decided to make a beer syrup with it today. So beer syrups can be a little tricky, but super fun to play around with. There's actually a really great article if you go to Punch that tells you all about beer syrups, how to make them. It actually breaks down the different styles and how you can best achieve like this beer syrup. But it's a really cool way you can incorporate beer into your cocktails. So with an IPA, it's pretty standard. You can do a 1-to-1 ratio. So I just did equal parts of the beer and white sugar. I do all my syrups cold. When you put things on heat, you lose evaporation, and then it's not, and you're going to lose some of that mouthfeel. So I try to do whenever I can all my syrups cold. Just takes a little longer, little TLC. And so I made this really awesome double IPA beer syrup. So we're gonna use a little bit of that, a little bit of the cold brew, and just what really shines through besides the maltiness of this beer is these Meyer lemon notes. So we're really going to kind of play into that as you see as we make the drink, bring out those lovely citrus notes. I told you I was gonna bring Pittsburgh into this, and Old Overholt is originally a Pittsburgh brand. The distillery is right in our backyard. And so I really wanted those spice characteristics to come through with all the malty, coffee, roasty notes. And then, of course, we're going to start with our classic Angstrom Bitter. So we're going to do 2 dashes of Angstrom Bitters. When you, here's what's tricky about bitters. Everyone dashes differently. You really want one huge, healthy dash. 1, 2. You don't want to like drip, drip. Your cocktail will taste completely differently. So make sure you're doing 1 big, healthy dash. 2 actually big, healthy dash in this case. We are going to take a 1/4 ounce of our double IPA syrup. Oh, I'm sorry. It was actually a double IPA syrup, and I actually added maple to this. So I did equal parts maple to this, and that was just going to help keep enhancing those really like warming fall leading to winter notes that that come through so nicely with the aromatics of the cold brew. So yeah, so this is a double IPA beer syrup and maple. And that's a common thing that I like to do when really trying to bring 2 flavors together, finding ways to just merge all these flavors. So it plays really, really nicely. We're gonna do a 1/4 ounce of the Jägermeister cold brew, and then 2 ounces of the Old Overholt rye. This is their bonded rye, it's one of their newer products that I'm a big fan of. All right, get some ice, and we're gonna stir this cocktail up. Have our bar spoon. Now the trick to when you stir a cocktail is you really are trying to achieve chillness and dilution. And it's a tricky balance because you don't ever want to over dilute your cocktail. But you'll be able to notice when you stir. How long you should stir really depends on what kind of ice you're using. And so sometimes it doesn't take as long, sometimes it takes a little longer, but you get to know it. I wait until I kind of see the glass is a little bit frosted, and then I know it's ready to pour. We're gonna grab a nice rocks glass, strain our cocktail in. Have a nice big ice cube for us. Look at this guy. And then I really want to bring out those citrus, like Meyer lemon notes. So instead of doing your classic orange peel, I'm actually going to do a lemon peel. And this is just really going to tie all those, again, those herbaceous notes, aromatics from the Jägermeister cold brew, and the double IPA syrup together. Make sure you're expressing the oil. So I peeled it and then I folded it, and I don't know if you could see from there, but you get a burst of all those oils. And then you want to rub that peel on the lip, rub it on the sides, and this is just going to bring out so much more of those lovely, lovely citrus notes that we love so much. All right, first one's done. Cheers, guys. Oh yeah. I'm into that. All right. So for our next cocktail, I'm gonna kind of throw it back a little to the Espresso Martini. I love an Espresso Martini. It kind of gets a little bit of hate. It's stuck in the 90s a little bit, people think. A lot of people do it a little differently, but it has such wonderful characteristics that you can just like plug and play. I'm gonna do a little bit of a twisted version of it and give it a little bit more of that like raspberries and chocolate coffee vibe. So for this beer, I need another beer syrup, and I use this really dope, the Jamberry, the IPA with blackberry from Lamplighter. It's such a good beer, man. And what I actually did for this beer syrup, I really wanted to bring out more of those, like it had already like the sourness of blackberries to it. And I wanted to bring out a little more of those like berry notes. So I actually rested this beer on strawberries. And so just to enhance those berry notes a little more. It's not changing the flavor profile once it gets into the cocktail as much as you would think. It just kind of adds this little nudge here and there. So we're also, again, throwing it back to Pittsburgh here. This is a local made vodka, parking chair vodka. So I'm going to rep Pittsburgh a little bit. We're also obviously going to use the amazing Jägermeister cold brew, which I'm obsessed with, by the way. It's going into all my hot and cold beverages these days. And then I have actually a little bit more of cold, like actual regular cold brew. And then I have the beer syrup that we made out of it's the strawberry rested Lamplighter. So I'm going to see if I can clear this up a little bit. I think I might not be able to see me make the drink. So we're going to take a 1/4 ounce of the beer syrup. We're going to do a full ounce of the Jägermeister cold brew. Then I'm going to do 1.5 ounces of regular cold brew. This is a 48-hour steep cold brew. 1.5 ounces of vodka. And then we're going to shake this bad boy. We're going to shake it so hard because we really want to get that nice, awesome frothiness that you're going to get from a really fantastic espresso martini. Pour it in. Shake. So you know that you're ready to stop shaking when, again, this shaker gets frosted. That's going to be your kind of your key. So you're like, you know what? This is good. We're going to break open that bad boy. Oh yeah, looking good. Oh, and I have one of these very nostalgic old martini glasses for us today for the espresso martini. I'm going to strain that right in. Check out all that frothiness. Yes. Then for our garnish, I have a couple espresso beans. Just 3 espresso beans right on top. All right, let's try it out. Oh yeah, you're getting so much of that lovely like berry undertones that this is like a dessert board. It has your coffee, your chocolate, your fruit notes. It is so cool, all the things you can do with beer and cocktails. And this Jägermeister cold brew, man, it is really enhancing the maltiness that comes through of that coffee and of the cold brew itself. And plays really well with all the notes that you're getting off of that beer syrup as well. All right. Oh yeah, that is freaking delicious. All right. So yeah, we're moving along. So those are kind of like our old standard cocktails. They're household name cocktails, if you will. The next two are more kind of like modern classic cocktails, if you will. And two of my favorites. First, we're gonna do a old Cuban. So I don't know if you're familiar with the old Cuban. It's kind of like a daiquiri meets a mojito in a really cool, jazzed up sort of way. So it was invented by Audrey Saunders, of Pegu Club. And she's one of these like founding fathers, women, or founding mothers, if you will, of the cocktail industry in the United States. And this is one of her drinks. It is traditionally a rum-based cocktail. So rum, mint, a little bit of Angstrom bitters, lime, and then you jazz it up. Instead of with mojito has soda, this has champagne. Way more fun. So we're gonna kind of take a twist on that today. And we have this awesome Crazy Pants, which this beer by itself is freaking delicious. Also, I'm loving this like fake signs, mask, blah, blah, blah label. What a great label. And I was so in love with this beer that like I was determined to find a way to use it today. And this one is the Crazy Pants Berliner Weiss with gooseberry and elderflower, vanilla, and lactose. So I thought, what a cool way to we're gonna use this as like the champagne of our old Cuban. But we're gonna start traditionally, just like an old Cuban, with some mint. So we get some fresh mint here. We do about 6 mint leaves. Just take them off. Now, I think a big mistake when people make mojitos is that they crush it with a muddler. And when they end up doing that, they end up actually crushing it so hard that it becomes bitter. And like, it's also at the bottom of the drink and people put their straw in, and then it just doesn't taste very good. The trick is either to very lightly crush it because you're just trying to release the oils. Or what I like to do is actually like smack it in my hand and just release all of that. And then I'm going to shake it in the cocktail. All right. So for this cocktail, I'm actually going to use a Demerara syrup. So Demerara, sugar in the raw, turbinado, if you're familiar. For this, I just do a 1-to-1 ratio. And we're just going to do a 3/4 of an ounce. And then we have some fresh squeezed lime juice. Do 3/4 ounce of fresh squeezed lime juice. Then we are going to take our ice cold Jägermeister and do 1.5 ounces of Jägermeister. Jägermeister is actually, I love substituting this in general in any sort of rum-based cocktail. The aromatics in a lot of like daiquiris, for example, or other tiki style drinks just play so well with a lot of the sweetness that is so prevalent in those cocktails, which you'll see another one next. But But yeah, in general, like I will forever substitute Jägermeister for in a daiquiri in place of rum, in place of a pina colada, Jäger colada, heck yeah. But yeah, I love all these botanicals that come through and just shine with all the citrus sweet notes that you get from more tiki style cocktails. And then we're gonna add 2 dashes of our Angstrom Bitters again. Oh no, wait, actually, I'm sorry, I switched up this recipe. Again, wanted to kind of go to the local. So we have this distillery in Pittsburgh called Quantum Spirits, and they make a black lime bitter. So I really wanted that to kind of play again with that lime juice and with that crazy pants that we're about to taste. Do 3 drops, Quantum black lime bitters. I'm gonna shake this cocktail. Nice solid seal, here we go. As if you can see from there, again, it gets frosted up. That's how I know it's ready to drink. We'll break open our tin. Being a little sucker today. There we are. Make sure you get those last little drops. We are going to put this in a coupe glass. Strain this guy. And then we're going to top it with our crazy pants. If you can see that from there. And then what I like to do is garnish. I garnish with just a little single mint leaf, something delicate, right in the center. So it's almost like in its own lazy pool of, it's a lazy river rather of your old Cuban. Let's try it out. Oh yeah, that is so cool. Again, like those aromatics that come through with the 56 different botanicals from Jägermeister, how they play so nicely with the lime and the sugar, and then this Berliner Weiss. Those, you're getting like really nice, the vanilla and lactose come across really nicely too, and the mouthfeel that's there with the carbonation. It's just a super delicious. This is and it's a little more seasonal with like the maltiness that does come from the beer and the Jägermeister. Those herbaceous notes. It's like a nice gateway drug from summer to fall. Oh, that's delightful. All right, we are just breezing through here today. So I have one more cocktail for you guys, and it is going to be, I've dubbed it the Berlin Weiss. So it's a play on the Miami Vice, which is a cool cocktail that is literally a pina colada and a strawberry daiquiri kind of like smashed together. The beauty of the cocktail comes when you can separate them, and so you have layers of 2 different colors in a cocktail. Great tropical tiki style. And so I'm going to kind of do a play on it. It's typically frozen. Mine today is actually going to be in a slushy format. And what we're going to do today is, so I actually took our Jägermeister and I infused it with strawberries. So what I did is I just took, for every cup of Jägermeister, 2 cups of chopped strawberries. I let it sit for 4 days, like in a cooler, to really just really infuse itself into the Jägermeister. Strawberries and Jägermeister is the way to go. It is freaking delicious. Those berry notes, again, are placed so nicely in tandem with all the aromatics of Jägermeister. So this is our strawberry infused Jägermeister. And then the beer that I'm gonna do is this awesome Guava Goza. Also, talk about like can art. So cool. This Collective Arts Guava Goza. So it's gonna have those real nice tropical notes, keep us in that Miami Vice feel. And then we have some fresh pineapple juice. And then I do a coconut mixture actually of coconut milk and Coco Lopez, so coconut cream. And just equal parts, half and half of that, and a little bit of lime. So, and how we're gonna do this cocktail, I'm serve it in my mason jar, get real hipster on you. We're going to make everything first, but without the beer. We're not gonna put the beer. Beer is gonna be kind of topper. And that's how in this case, normally you would have like 2 frozen layers. Because it's the slushy, it's kind of like sit on top. And so you're still gonna get some of that layered effect. The Jägermeister with strawberries does make the bottom color like a little more darker. And this isn't as bright because obviously it's a beer, but you still get this like just really cool effect. So we are going to take an ounce and a half of the strawberry infused Jägermeister. Also do an ounce and a half of the pineapple juice. I'm going to take 1 whole ounce of the coconut milk and cream. We're going to do ½ ounce of lime juice. The lime really, when you're playing with pineapple as a citrus, for instance, pineapple has a hard time standing up on its own, like within cocktails. So if you add a little bit of lime juice to it, it's really just going to, again, like the strawberries, how they enhanced that blackberry beer, it seems like it would take away. It doesn't. It just adds like a nice enhancer. It's like those spices in the blend that like really bring everything together. The lime does the same thing. So we add a little bit of lime juice. Again, that's just like to brighten up those pineapple notes here. And then I'm gonna shake this bad boy. We see that the tin is frosted. Break apart those tins. Every last drop counts. Then we're going to strain that into the mason jar. And then we're going to fill it with crushed ice. So I'm pretty fortunate. I have a snow cone machine at my disposal, so I get this really thin ice. We could also blend ice to get this, or use a loose bag to use a mallet. So first, we're just going to kind of put a little bit of ice, not all of the ice in there. And then we're gonna stir it up, emulsify everything, making sure everything is nice and blended. We're gonna put a little more ice on top, and then we are gonna top the rest with our collective arts guava goza. Ooh. So good. I'm a sour fanatic, so I want everything to be sour. This is fantastic though. So yeah, we're gonna put a little more ice on there for texture and volume. Oh, we got a little bit of overflow there. That's how you know it's good. And then sip and enjoy, guys. For a garnish, I actually have this strawberry that I already kind of like pre-fanned out. And that is gonna add some, just like some extra color, bring everything together. Sip and enjoy, guys. Well, yeah. No, we're kind of just blew right through all those cocktails. I was so excited to play all this Jägermeister. I don't know if there's necessarily any questions. I know, Grace, originally we talked about if they had time at the end, but
Yeah, definitely. I think you are a cocktail pro, as we could all see from that expert shake that you have. I'm still trying to figure out how you do that so well. But yeah, you just blew through those recipes. So, we definitely have time here to get into a little bit more questions on any of the recipes that Kat just showed you. I have a couple questions here that as you were going through, Kat, on some of the recipes, people just had a couple, fine tuning points that they wanted to ask you. So I'm going to pull some of those. And then we have a little time, and I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more about the cocktail industry in general, because, I know a lot about craft beer, and I know significantly less about craft cocktails. I think this is a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit more. So first of all, I'm going to pull up the first question. I know it's hard for you to see, so I'm going to shout it out for you.
I'm going to imbibe on this one while we talk.
Amazing. I should crack open a beer while we talk. But yeah, a lot of people were asking that first double IPA maple beer syrup that you made. Could you go into a little bit more detail about that and just kind of tell us what the exact recipe is?
Yeah, so I took again, it was the Resident Culture West Coast Connection double IPA. With IPA beers, you can do like a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's equal parts this beer and sugar. If you want to get really nerdy on it, you should weigh everything opposed to just using like an ounce like measuring cup. The more like specific you can be, the more precise you can be, rather, the better it's just going to end up overall. So I literally like weighed out 16 ounces of this can. It ended up being, I think, just a little less in volume. But by the time you lose a little bit with the head and like what sticks in the can. And then I used that measurement and measured out the same amount in white sugar. I literally just combine them together and whisk them up until all the sugar is dissolved. I try not to use heat on syrups unless there's herbs involved or there's some sort of flavor that I want to impart. Again, that can't be achieved in a liquid form, if that makes sense. So like herbs are a good example. So if I'm doing like a mint syrup or something, like I need to impart the herbs on that. So you need the heat. But the more you use heat, the more you lose with evaporation. So it's not as like precise. But yeah, I just literally whisked it until all the sugar was dissolved. And then I took a maple syrup. So I had real maple, and that was also in equal parts 1-to-1 maple and water. And I just combined them equal parts together. When I was making the cocktail originally, I just felt like it was nice, but it just needed some more of those, like another spice or flavor to kind of really connect the Jägermeister cold brew and the double IPA syrup. And then have the lemon kind of just be its like centerpiece, if you will. So I literally I took 8 ounces of the beer syrup, 8 ounces of the maple syrup, and combined them together, which is like a nice tact. Typically, even if I wasn't using the beer syrup, sometimes I'll flavor other syrups like honey or maple. I'll like actually infuse spices or herbs or flowers or things into them. Like I did a really nice lavender honey one time or things like that. Because it's a really easy way to put more flavor notes into your cocktails by infusing the actual ingredients. And because a cocktail can only be so big, you know what I mean? So when you're making an individual cocktail, you'll start running out of room proportionately. If you have like a lavender syrup, a honey syrup, like it's too much sweetness, will be unbalanced, and it'll be honestly just like too large to get all those flavors in. But you can find ways to impart the flavors on the ingredients that you're already doing. It's a cool way to just like continuing adding layers to things, which are all of these beers honestly have so many layers to them as well. So it's kind of like a really cool thing that we could do so much with everything that's going on with all of them. Oh, Grace, you're muted.
Yep, I was going to say crafting a cocktail and really finding like all these nuances and building these layers of flavor is very similar to brewing a beer and making sure you're layering all your ingredients and your hops and the yeast that you're using and things like that. One of the interesting trends that I found and that we're doing in this class today is that beer is now being a highlight or like an additional level of flavor in cocktails. Two things that previously were disparate and weren't really, put together.
Yeah.
And I think Jägermeister has really kind of been at the forefront of that trend with their Deer and Beer campaign and really encouraging people to, take their ice cold shot of Jägermeister and help it accentuate the different flavors of your beer. So can you talk a little bit more about this trend of beer cocktails that you've seen? Like, how have you seen it grow? Where do you think it's going? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool universe, and I would love to see it more. I think that frequently, like, beer people and cocktail people get pigeoned into like their own corners, and there's not necessarily like a ton of overlap with it. But there's so many cool things that you can do with beer, like beer syrups, topping with beer, like in champagne, like I did today, where I think that bartenders now are getting so creative with so many like cool ways. And it's a really cool time. It's a really great, exciting time to be a bartender. And to have access to all these breweries that are doing such amazing, cool things. And I'd love to see even more so, more collaborations between bartenders and breweries. I don't necessarily know what it's like in a lot of other markets. In Pittsburgh, breweries can't have bars necessarily because they can just like serve beer because of their licensing. So I think unfortunately because of but that might not be the case everywhere. Obviously liquor is mandated state by state. But here I think that maybe that's why it kind of isn't taking off as much as it could be, where you really just have the beer people in one corner, the cocktail people in another corner, because there isn't like that space for a collaboration all the time. But you're seeing it more and more. And I think it's the more that kind of the cocktail people get into understanding the brewing process, that everyone can kind of come together to like get more exciting ideas and like what you can do with this, whether it's like create a hop syrup. So it doesn't even have to be like a beer syrup, but but importing those flavors, the more it's really hard to find really unique or like aromatic umami flavors and things that aren't alcohol, you know what I mean? To substitute, you know what I'm saying?
And we've seen that. I mean, I've seen that in the cider industry. There are ciders out there that are using hops, to flavor their cider now. And so I think it's just kind of a logical evolution of the industry, that they're two very creative industries, craft beer and craft cocktails. And so I see them kind of eventually, having some more alignment at some point. And we've seen some like cocktail inspired beers out there too, beers that have been inspired by the flavors of different cocktails. So I think we're definitely getting there. I wanted to chat a little bit more about your experience. This is a Women in Craft Beer Festival. And so you've been a woman behind the bar, for 15 years now. So could you talk a little bit about your experience as a woman in the industry? Have you ever had any challenges being a woman behind the bar, and how have you ever
Yes, I'm a woman behind a bar. Yes. Although I will say that I have been in a very fortunate position in every step of the way of my career and places I've worked. I've always worked with men who are feminists and very supportive and things like that. So even though the difficult positions I've been really put into are more of like a guest bartender interaction, which is part of just being a part of front of house, where you're not going to be able to serve people that you may necessarily like or agree with or anything of that nature. And so that treatment as a woman is weird sometimes, but it's after this long, you just kind of. I actually am trying to actively be better about standing up for myself. I feel as though for a very long time, it was really easy for me to brush off something that someone said because I just would rather not address it. It wasn't until I became a bar manager that I made a better point of standing up for myself, because I wanted my other female employees to feel as though they could stand up for themselves, and that when they did, they would be supported. But it's a fine line. It's really difficult. You're in the hospitality world, you're in literally the industry of making people feel good. And it's really hard finding that line when you're in an uncomfortable situation, or someone says something that you don't like, about still being able to provide really great service with this person that maybe you don't see eye to eye with, or made a snide remark, or did something that you don't agree with.
Oh, that's a really good point, because you are literally, when you're behind the bar, you're in the business of hospitality. And so your, job is really to give someone a great experience at your bar. And what if they put you in an uncomfortable situation? How do you deal with that? So I think what you're saying is just having more confidence in yourself, and having the confidence to like stand up in those situations seems to be something that you've learned over the years.
Yeah, I found that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it. It's all you.
Oh, I found that it starts at the top, and it's by making early conscious decisions on who you are, what your business stands for, what your morals and values and mission of a company is, and as a person are, and from the get-go, just embodying that. It's really easy if from the jump you can just be like, hey, this is who we are, and then the world, the people accept that and are comfortable there. I'm like, you're never going to please anyone, even if you tried, you know what I mean? And so it's much better to go in to be like, hey, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is the kind of place that we are. And this is what we want to provide. And then the people that want to be a part of that kind of fall in line. So you find yourself not having those kinds of situations when it starts from the top, and that is like a part of the conversation from day one.
Yeah. So, and you have your own business now, or your own hospitality group, Mindful Hospitality. So is that something you're mindful of? See what I did there?
Very much so.
Mindful Hospitality. Tell us a little bit more about.
Yes. Mindful Hospitality Group, my partner Cecil and I, was really spurred for a couple of reasons. But one, we just saw a lack of thoughtful or mindfulness in certain places. There was a lot of places in Pittsburgh that were opening that they didn't necessarily know what they were doing or have anyone in charge that had done this before, and like some things just like fell short, or there were just little things that like you could have just done this, like you could have been a little more thoughtful, and just like bringing a more holistic approach to bar programs in general, and just having things that make sense, keeping the idea of the community at the forefront of your mind. I think that's a big mistake that people do when they open up restaurants and bars, is that they do something for themselves rather than for the community that they're doing. Like, do people really need that? Does that building where you're opening, like the people around you is that what they're in need for? You know what I mean? And so it was to really bring attention to that and just do things more thoughtfully in general.
Nice. There's some really great discussion going on I know you can't see it, but in the comments here. But I wanted to follow up this question that just came up a little bit ago, circle back around to it. But, what have you found kind of in your experimentation, maybe for this class or just at any of the bars that you're consulting with? What are some of the best styles of beer that people can use to experiment with and make cocktails on their own at home?
The easy answer is any beer. I think that there is a place for every single beer and a cocktail. It just depends on like what kind of cocktail you want to do. We didn't have anything to play with necessarily today, but I love playing around with stouts and porters as well. They give so much of that nice like malty roasty notes, and there's so many cool stouts now that like a coconut stout or a banana stout, you know what I mean, where you already have those fruit flavors, where you can use those to kind of enhance your cocktail and take it to the next level. But I mean, I'm obsessed, like I said earlier, I'm obsessed with sours. I love seeing how they play in cocktails, trying different things with them. Berliner Weisses are always really lovely because you can use them in a syrup. You could use them as a topper. And I think I see a lot of people also trending the milkshake IPAs, but also with the Saisons, like are doing really cool, like herbal and citrus infusions and plays on that, which help provide that, just bring a cocktail up a notch and be able to provide a different ingredient or spice herbal notes that you wouldn't have been able to impart otherwise.
Yeah. And I saw, in the comments, some people were going back and forth about, talking about whiskey versus bourbon and how to really get into cocktails. So as I mentioned, I know a lot about craft beer. I'm really comfortable drinking beer, and spirits are something that I haven't gotten into as much. So what's like a great starting point for someone like that's looking to, try more Jägermeister, try more whiskey or more bourbon? What's a good starting point to kind of get into the industry and learn more?
Sure. I think, that's a loaded question. I have so many ways to go this right now. If you are interested in spirits, if you're interested in cocktails, like I'm a nerd, like read. Like there is some really awesome books. Death & Co.'s cocktail book, Imbibe by Dave Wondrich are two of my go-tos as far as learning more about the spirits and about cocktails as well and why things work and why they don't work. But one thing that I do encourage people to always keep in mind that I feel like they get with food but not with drinks is that you should drink something that you like. So have fun, like experimenting what we like. We all know the foods that we like and that we don't like. Just find out what you like in a spirit and a cocktail. You know what I mean? And that will kind of like be your gateway drug to like open up a whole world for you. But it's okay if, and maybe also keep in mind that if you say, I see get a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't do tequila. I hate tequila. And a lot of that is because there was a lot of bad tequila in America for a very long time. So tequila is the most highly regulated spirit in the world. And the United States didn't always recognize the regulations that Mexico put in place for its standards. So Americans are drinking a lot of really crappy tequila and now have and they had some really terrible night in college. And like, that's why they don't hang out with tequila at all. But like, it's one of those things where I invite people to like, even if you only remember Jägermeister from your college days and like maybe you had way too much of a one night and kind of sworn off, I invite you to like go back and try it. Jägermeister is an Amaro. So if you're familiar with like, it's a Krauter technically because it's a German Amaro, but Amaro is getting to be a very notarized category of spirits, and they're traditionally bitter and Italian, but the Germans have every drinking culture has an Amaro, an after dinner kind of digestif. The Germans have Krauter, which Jägermeister is. The French have Amir. But I think people would be really surprised to see if they try Jägermeister now, especially ice cold, frozen if it can be, right from the freezer, about how actually delightful it really is, and like the aromatics, the floralness that come through. And now as we've all developed into grown-ups from college, about how much more we can appreciate these things about how we drink them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, we all have those experiences in college where we drank a lot of light beer, and then there was just that moment where, it clicked for us and we had that first craft beer and we started exploring the whole kind of craft beer industry and whatnot. And I really encourage people to have that kind of light bulb moment with Jägermeister as well, because it really is a grown-up drink now that you can have in addition to the beer that you're drinking as well. So you were talking a little bit about kind of like gateways and gateway cocktails and things like that. I distinctly remember the first craft beer that I had, and it was a Goose Island 312, which isn't even technically considered a craft beer anymore.
My first craft beer was Goose Island Sophie.
No way.
And that changed my world.
It absolutely blew my mind. So I'd just been drinking Busch Light up until then. And I distinctly remember this. I was in a bar near Wrigleyville in Chicago, and I went up to the bartender and I asked for a 312. And because I had no idea that 312 meant the area code in Chicago, and that was actually weird. Despite the fact that it was like a phone handle, it took me another 5 years to connect that the name was the area code for Chicago. So yeah, everyone kind of has that gateway. What was like the first? You went through a couple like twists on traditional cocktail recipes, but what was like your gateway cocktail for you?
My gateway cocktail was probably a Manhattan. And I say that, which is like a very strange thing that probably doesn't make sense just upon hearing the sentence. But my first, when I worked in restaurants, I was kind of like a server in a lot of like more like family style restaurants, like Applebee's, Chili's, that kind of thing, or like fine dining Italian. And they weren't necessarily hip or up on the times or anything of that nature. And so the first like craft cocktail bar, the first bar I ever worked in those craft cocktails was also a whiskey bar. And it just like blew my mind. And because I realized the number one thing, the reason like why nobody liked Manhattans or I didn't like Manhattans was because no one was keeping their vermouth in the fridge. Vermouth is a fortified wine and it's not shelf stable. And so vermouth in general, it's another reason like people always say like no vermouth in my martini, because they were drinking bad vermouth, literally bad vermouth for so many years. And so the first time I ever had refrigerated vermouth and like it was Carpano Classico, and like I was like, oh, this is what this tastes like. And that for me was just, and then I was pairing it with like different types of whiskeys. Also, I had a High West Campfire Old Fashioned. So High West is a Utah distillery, and they make this Campfire whiskey that's like super smoky and an old fashioned, and that like rocked my world. That was like one of the first times I was like thought about different flavor pairings and like how like old fashioned isn't smoky, you know what I mean, like traditionally, but how great like layering can become. But that cocktail bar I worked at like kind of like blew my mind. I just like happened to stumble into it. They asked me when they hired me, like, oh, what do you know about whiskey? And I said, I like to shoot Jameson. And I thought that was charming. And they hired me. But yeah, I think those are two drinks that like when I started to realize, wow, there is so much to know. There is so much to learn. Just these little tiny things change the trajectory of these cocktails. And it's just based on knowledge.
Yeah, I love seeing people start posting in the comments like their first craft beer, and I know you can't see it.
Nice.
All different types of Four Peaks, Kilt Lifter, Delirium Tremens, Bass Ale, Pete's Wicked Ale. So right, it's also about the time and the place, right? When you grew up, and when you were first introduced to craft beer, and kind of like what point you were at in the craft beer movement or the craft cocktail movement. So we have a few more minutes. I just want to kind of wrap things up. I like to wrap these things up a lot by looking ahead to the future. So tell us a little bit more about what's on the horizon for you, Mindful Hospitality, and then where do you think the cocktail industry is going? Tell us a little bit more about what the future looks like.
Sure. Yeah. So Mindful Hospitality, we are just finished our full first year in business, which has been, I mean, what a year to start a business. It's been a wild ride. We are extremely busy with projects right now, which we feel incredibly blessed. We really wondered during the pandemic, rather, what our whole company would look like. Like consulting is a luxury for most people. But we've been very fortunate where a lot of people use this time to really take a dark, hard look at what they were doing. And you know what? It's time for me to bring in someone who knows what they're doing. So I know that this is ironclad. We do ton of private events, virtual events such as this, socially distanced weddings, virtual conventions, all kinds of things. It's a really interesting time. I think that while it's a really trying time for the hospitality industry, obviously, there's no people like the people that work in restaurants. Every day, something goes wrong. Like today, for instance, I'm not supposed to be in the space that I am, but something came up and I'm like, all right, we're just going to make this work. And that's a very common thing that happens in restaurants all the time. And people that work in restaurants, always something comes up and they're able to, by the time it's time to open the doors and turn on the lights, the guests are none the wiser. And it's part of just the magic of it. And so restaurant industry people are really good at rolling with the punches. And so it's been really cool to see how creative people have become in this time and really just stepped up and be like, all right, this is what we're doing now. And this is what needs to happen. As far as the future of the craft cocktail industry, I have no idea. We have taken as resilient as people are. There have been a lot of huge hits. The old Cuban cocktail that I made, Audrey Sanders cocktail, the bar Pegu Club closed, or Clover Club closed. It was Pegu Club. Excuse me. Pegu Club closed at the very beginning of the pandemic. So it's a really hard hit. You know what I mean? There's places, Existing Conditions is a Don Lee bar in New York City that, is just full like ahead of its time and can't sustain itself. The restaurant industry has really small margins. Cocktail industry has cocktail bars have even smaller margins. I joke all the time that if you don't like money, you should be a cocktail bartender. Like it's a lot of work to put a lot of detail and attention into drinks with very, very tiny margins. But the one thing that has happened is everyone keeps drinking. So
100% true. Drinking has definitely gone up during this past.
Yeah, and it's been cool to see bartenders, friends of mine, like use like quarantine to like. A lot of people just started like making videos of themselves making cocktails every day and posting them and getting creative and like we're like, well, fine, I can't do this anywhere else. I'll do it here. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. I think we'll be just fine. It is scary and frustrating and really hard, especially with, again, your tipped hospitality workers being kind of like on the front lines, dealing with the public in such a strange situation and putting kind of their health at risk to still provide comfort to other people. But yeah, no, I think it can only go up from here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So we're going to have to wrap things up here because we only have a few minutes left, but I just want to take these last closing minutes to thank you, Kat, for taking us through this amazing cocktail class, and to Jägermeister as well for helping us to create all these wonderful deer and beer recipes that you saw here today. So I saw some people that were asking if we could provide the recipes to all the cocktails that you created today. So if you feel comfortable sharing that with us, this video will actually be live on our YouTube page in about a day or so. We'll get it up there. So we'll also post the recipes to that YouTube page as well. So you can not only rewatch this class, but also follow along and maybe make these cocktails at a different time with all the ingredients that you need and the beers as well. If you guys are sticking around with us, we're heading into the end of our day here. So we just have a few different events left. Our next one is our Worldwide Women Toast. So Kat, what you were saying about how in the restaurant industry, you really have to roll with the punches all the time. We certainly did that this year here at Beers Without Beards. So I'm going to be taking some time to toast with all of you, just that we're here and that we're surviving and that we're continuing to celebrate the achievements of women in craft beer. I'll tell a little bit more about the story behind how I created the festival and how we were able to team up with Bumble this year to really help bring this into a digital format. So hopefully I'll see you guys in about 15 minutes or so. Kat, thanks so much again for creating all these wonderful
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, enjoy drinking all those by yourself now.
Thank you.